Good afternoon. On your business desk this afternoon, we start here. The National Treasury has been heavily criticized for proposed further budget cuts to spending, mainly to fund an extension of the Social Relief of Distress grant. The news has been met with hostility from all quarters, with some saying the government is largely to blame for the position it finds itself in. The news comes just weeks before Finance Minister Newzroom is to deliver the mid-term budget policy statement at the beginning of November. So what would budget cuts mean for the ordinary South African? Well, for that, we're joined by Duma Gqubule, who is the research associate at the Social Policy Initiative. Duma, thank you very much for your time indeed. There is a huge worry ahead of the MTBPS about what we are about to hear from the Finance Minister in terms of these proposed budget cuts. And judging from what you said on social media and elsewhere, this is another road to nowhere. This is something that should never have happened in terms of this presentation being done to the presidency in the form that it is in. I want us to start here. What do we know so far about what these proposals are? We know a bit of it in terms of 60 programs that might be cut to make way for money to be found for the Social Relief of Distress grant. But what is the bottom line here about why we are here today? Okay,
Kolani, firstly, I was at the engagement that the President had with the media and academics 2 weeks ago, and he clearly said he wants a basic income grant. And it sounded like he wants to have a part of the ANC election campaign. A few days later, he convenes a summit at the Spear Wine Estate in Stellenbosch in the Western Cape. And he has the Reserve Bank, National Treasury, and Treasury puts forward this presentation. It is the most absurd presentation I've seen in many years of following the economy. First of all, they've proposed like sweeping budget cuts, that 60 programs, as you said, 10 government departments that could be closed or merged. They're talking about something. We had the gear policy in the 1990s. This is far deeper than anything that has happened since 1994. Now, the context in which this is happening is that we are in the worst post-apartheid economic crisis. GDP per capita hasn't grown for 15 years. The forecast as we speak before these budget cuts is that it will continue to decline for another 3 years. So by 2025, we will have a lower GDP per capita than it was 18 years ago. And we can't continue like this, Kolani. And what Treasury is doing, it wants to put more pain into South African people. 42% who are unemployed, 47% for African people, and 51% for African females. Now, the government, broadly defined, including state-owned companies, is about 40% of GDP. So you can't cut 40%. So much. You know, government is part of the economy. So you can't cut. So what happens if you cut so deeply, it reduces GDP, it reduces the tax revenue, and it results in a higher debt ratio. So a national budget does not operate like a household budget. When me and you cut spending, we save. But the government, it's almost like a self-defeating purpose. So what has happened, I have looked at the economy over the last 30 years, and the economic performance roughly correlates with the level of government spending. So what we had 1996 to 2003, we had the gear policy, which was cut, slash and burn macroeconomic policies. Then from 2003, after the end of gear, to 2008, the government started spending on its people. Consumption spending increased by about 5% a year. Investment, about 15% a year. It was huge. And our economy grew by 4.5% a year. We created 3.1 million jobs. And the debt ratio came down to about 28%. So what has happened since 2009 is that the government has stopped spending on its people. And the reason for the rising debt ratio is not overspending by government departments. It is because of the lack of spending, because it reduces the size of our economy. It reduces the growth of the economy. So the most sustainable way to reduce this debt ratio is to increase GDP, which is the bottom part of the denominator, and grow the economy.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you just touched on, government being the single biggest spender in the economy. What will that do to the general economy? And I ask this because, Duma, some people will say that, but the government is doing this for the low-income or no-income population, those who are in need of SRD grants.
Oh, yeah, no, okay, back to the SRD grant. So what I can't understand is that this is consolidated government spending is 2.2 trillion. The SRD grant is 36 billion. That is a small part of government spending.
Yes.
Why would the president have a summit with all those people just to discuss the small item of spending? I just don't understand it. So what you had there is that Treasury just decided to put on the scare tactics, the fear-mongering, because this program has been in government for 3 years.
Already,
It was unfunded. There were no taxes to introduce this program. It just happened. And now they say the budget in 2023 said it's going to end at the end of March 2024. And this is 2 months before the budget, before the national election. And so it makes no sense that they would want to stop a program that benefits 8 million people 2 months before an election. And Treasury knows that this program can't end. So why are you budgeting for no spending? It makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah.
When it comes to this particular issue of the spending, many people are thinking that SRD grants are for the poor people, so this should actually be something that should be welcomed. But they don't understand the implications of for the other government departments. Tell us about those, because it's not just those 8 million people who have benefited to the tune of 100 billion rands in the past 3 years since SRD came in. It's more on education budget cuts, health budget cuts, and already we know our health department hasn't been on a good footing.
It's about a freeze on employment. It's about cutting early retirement, reducing the public sector. And we have about, last time I looked last year, I think it's about 160,000 unfunded vacancies in the public sector. Now, on top of that, you want to continue to cut the number of people in employment. And I just have to mention one thing. Over the past 4 years, the budgeting has been very dishonest in the sense that they've penciled in each time 1.5% or 1.6% increase in the public sector wage bill when they know that that will not happen. Yes. And every single year over the past 4 years, they start off with this 1.5, then they have a proper discussions with labor, and then they have a higher increase. Now this year it happens, and they're acting surprised that we now have 7.5, but they knew when they put in that 1.5 that is going to be something around 7 or 7.5 or 6%. So there's no honesty in the budgeting process. So this 2023 budget for me was the first one I just thought was not worth the paper it's written on, because they were making so many assumptions around the public sector wage bill. The SRD grant will not continue when we know it's going to continue. The presidential employment stimulus benefits more than 1 million people. They said it's not going to continue, and we know it's going to continue. So why are they putting these things in the budget when they know that these programs will continue? Yeah.
So to what end would they do all of this?
I think it was meant to scare people, Kolani, because there's even one thing that didn't get reported a lot about this thing, is that now they're proposing a fiscal rule. Now, for me, that is just an assault on democracy. So what's going to happen is that there will be a law that says, Treasury, as the bureaucrats at Treasury have decided that we don't like this thing of having to go to Parliament, having to discuss with Cabinet, which rejected this thing, by the way, last week, and we're having to discuss with the ANC, NEC. So no, we're going to have a law that's going to make it compulsory. When you hit a certain debt size or arbitrary debt size, or you have a primary budget, whatever they want, then it will automatically kick in austerity. So they want to legislate austerity. It must kick in automatically without any discussion in society, in budgets, civil society. It must happen automatically. That is an absurd thing. So what it means in practice is that we already have, suppose we have inflation targeting plus a fiscal rule. It means that the government won't have the tools of macroeconomic policy to be able to address the unemployment crisis. It's a bizarre set of proposals, and I believe that Treasury has crossed the line. These proposals will collapse the economy, and they will also result in social unrest. Yeah.
That is quite scary. Something that we've heard from a number of quarters, that South Africa is in the top 10 of countries that are facing social unrest and that are a powder keg, really, vulnerable when it comes to that. Duma, I wish we had more time because there is a lot that is being spoken about in this particular report, particularly as you see some of the things that are going to be introduced, including or are being proposed, including tinkering with the Public Finance Management Act, something we didn't get to talk about, but we will find some time closer to the MTBPS. Duma Gqubule is the Research Associate at the Social Policy Initiative.